So let's do some more data wrangling. We're going to do some data transformation, and then we're going to calculate some columns. And it's going to be a multi-step process. So let's show you where we're starting. We're starting with this data that is avocado import data into the United States. So you can see every row is a week. And during that week, during January of 2021, that first week of January, we imported 100,000 avocados from Colombia. And we imported like 65 million from Mexico. And what we want to do is we want to make it look like this. Notice a couple things. We've extracted out the year from our date and the month from our date. That's so we can group them by year, month. We've taken our country, and instead of having them across the top as columns, we've unpivoted them into a column. And then we've listed the number that are imported during that week in one column. But this last column is where we want to focus our attention. This column is an implementation of this equation. So the percent year of month is the number of avocados imported from a specific country in a specific week. That's essentially just these numbers right there. That's the number of avocados imported from a specific country in a specific week. And then we're going to divide it by total avocados imported in a year, month. In other words, just a specific month. So we distinguish between January 2021 and January 2022. And so in order to get this new denominator, we're going to have to group our data, and we're going to have to use the group data by year, month as our denominator. And so in other words, this denominator, we're going to create a separate table that we can reference to get that number. The numerator, we're just going to extract from the numbers that already exist. So to get started, I'm going to label this worksheet original so I can keep track of the steps that I take, like leave an audit trail. So I just want to mark this as the original data. So my first step is to actually get this data inside Power Query. And to do that, I click on Data. Notice I clicked inside the data range. Then we can do from table or range because it's already in Excel. Notice it highlights the outer boundary, and I click OK. And now that invokes Power Query. So in here, I'll go ahead and label this as original. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And one of the first steps I want to do is I want to add my year and month column. So to do that, I'm going to highlight on date. Notice when I did it, it brought up some profiling information. We'll ignore that. I click the date column. I go to add column. I then pull down on date and go year, year. That extracts the year from that date. I'm going to click on date again and go month, month. And just so I can keep these kind of at the forefront, I'm going to hold down Control and select them both. I'm going to drag them over here to the front. So now I've added my year and month column, which we're going to need to group our data by year and month. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this so I can do the next step. The next step is I'm going to unpivot countries. So I just want these to kind of melt down and become part of one column. It'll actually become two columns. So what I did there is I clicked on Colombia, and then I hold down Shift and click Mexico, and it highlights all the columns in between. Then I go to Transform, Unpivot. And notice it falls down like this. This column has my country in it. And this column has the number that I imported from that country in that week. So I'll rename it number imported. So now this is going to serve as my base table. But what we want to do is we want to add that percentage of the total month column here. But we're going to kind of break off and go work down a different parallel thread so that we can get our table that aggregates, that sums our total number of imports each month. And so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And this here I'm going to group by year, month. So I'm going to take this table, And I'm going to roll it up. Right now you can see there's lots of rows. There's 624 rows. But because I've got 2 years worth of data and there's 12 months in each year, I'm going to compress this down. I'm going to aggregate it into 24 rows, 2 times 12. And so I'm going to invoke the group by function. I'm going to click on advanced because I want to group by 2 columns. I want a year, and I'm going to add a level for the month. And then the column name that I want the new column to be called is total month year imports. See, I'm just trying to name them so I remember, so it's descriptive of what it contains. I'm going to sum, and I'm going to sum the number imported across this column. So everywhere I see 2021 month 1 all the way down to here, it's going to sum the values and number of imported. And now this is a table. These numbers right here represent my denominator. So now I've got all the parts to my equation, and so I'm going to load this back into Excel. Give it a minute to load. Notice I've got 2 originals that I named one, and then I named one inside Power BI. They're going to look very much the same. Don't worry about that. But notice my steps go from right to left. So then I added a year. I unpivoted. And now I group by year month. So like we said, this table right here is going to be the table we're adding to. So I'm just going to hold down Control, click and drag out a new copy of it. And this is going to be I'm going to calculate the percent of year month in this. And I'm just going to do this right inside Excel. So I'm going to zoom in so we can see a little better. So I want to add a column, and I'm going to call that percent of year month. Double click and expand out that column to auto fit it. And now remember, this is where we're going to implement this equation. Where did our equation go? Guess I don't have it anymore. Our numerator is going to be the number imported, and our denominator we're going to use VLOOKUP. But notice that the first value of VLOOKUP is a lookup value. I want to look up from this group table. I want to look up a row for each year month, but they're in separate columns, and VLOOKUP doesn't let us reference separate columns. So what we're going to do is we're just going to combine the information in those two columns by pasting them together. So we're going to call this year month. I'm going to go equals, select year, and then ampersand is our pasting operator. It's going to stick those two together. I'm going to select month. And notice it's just taken 2021 and added 1 to it. 2021 and added 2. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to do year, month. Doesn't matter what you call it. Ampersand, and select month. And now I've got a lookup value that I can use to index into this value right there, because that's going to be our denominator. So here we go. Ready? Our numerator is that divided by VLOOKUP. Our denominator is, we need to go reference it from this other table. We're going to look up this value and then hit comma to be able to specify our table array. Our table array is going to be right here. I'm going to highlight all the way down. Notice I don't highlight the first 2 columns because my lookup table, the lookup value has to be found in the first column on the left. So you aren't going to see the rest of this. I'm going to hit comma, and then I'm going to type in 2 because I've got 2 columns and I want to extract the number from the second column. And then I'm going to hit comma again and do false. I'm just going to type in false because I want it to be an exact match. I'm going to hit enter. And there's our value. So this value represents, let's go ahead and change it to a percentage. I'm going to do the whole column, change it to a percentage, give it a couple significant digits. So that value means that the number of avocados imported from Colombia represent 0.03% of all the avocados imported in January 2021. So one thing we might want to do a little cleanup here. Notice that there's a formula behind here, and it's dependent upon our year month. So I'm just going to get rid of that dependency by highlighting the column, hitting Control-C to copy, Control-Alt-V to paste special. I hit V and it bounces me down here. You can select it with your mouse, but I just want to paste the values. And now there's not a formula behind there anymore. So that means I can get rid of this year month. It was just a temporary helper column. And there, we're complete. We've arrived at our goal. So once again, keep in mind, it's important to understand what these numbers mean. This number right here is the number of avocados imported from Colombia in the first week of January. This number right here means that of all the avocados imported in January 2021, 0.03% came from Colombia in the first week of January, because there's 3 other weeks in January. And you'll see this down here. Here's the second week of imports from Colombia. So make sure you always understand your data, and hopefully this was helpful. Have fun.